The desert was empty until satellite images revealed the impossible. For centuries, the vast desert stretching across the American Southwest was believed to be lifeless, a barren ocean of sand, wind, and silence. Generations of explorers, settlers, and scientists crossed its burning plains and found nothing but dry stone and endless dunes. Yet in the summer of 2021, that silence was broken. From the cold eye of a satellite orbiting hundreds of miles above Earth, something impossible appeared beneath the sands. Shapes, patterns, and shadows that seemed far too perfect to be natural. The discovery began as part of a NASA thermal imaging survey designed to track ancient underground water channels. But when the data was processed, analysts noticed faint circular formations spreading across a remote section of the desert. They formed an immense pattern, rings within rings, intersected by straight corridors that radiated outward like spokes from a central hub. The structure covered more than 50 square kilometers. From orbit, it looked eerily like the ruins of a buried city. At first, the team dismissed it as a software anomaly, a trick of light and heat. But after cross-checking the data with LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar, the patterns persisted. Dr. Eleanor Grant, an archaeologist known for her work on lost North American settlements, was called in to review the findings. What she saw changed the course of her career. When we overlaid the multispectrum scans, she later said, the geometry became undeniable. There were foundations, corridors, and chambers. It was real. Something was there, and it was old. 2 months later, Grant led an expedition into the desert. The journey took them 3 days through harsh, shifting dunes before they reached the coordinates seen from space. The team set up camp beside a rocky plateau where the instruments had detected the strongest readings. Under the blinding sun, they began to dig. The first layers of sand revealed nothing but dust and fragmented stones. Then, at a depth of nearly 10 meters, their shovels struck something solid. It wasn't bedrock. It was cut stone. Smooth, deliberate, and aligned with precision. As the excavation widened, they uncovered what appeared to be a section of a wall built from massive basalt blocks stacked seamlessly without mortar. The surface of each block bore strange marks, shallow grooves that followed geometric patterns, as if carved by tools no one recognized. The stones themselves were another mystery. Geological analysis confirmed they came from a quarry more than 200 miles away. How had an ancient people transported such weight across a landscape that even modern trucks struggled to cross? And more importantly, who had done it? By the third week, the team had exposed a small chamber, no more than 3 meters wide, sealed beneath a collapsed ceiling. Inside, they found no artifacts, no bones, no signs of human life, only a single flat slab in the center. The slab was perfectly smooth, darker than the surrounding rock, and emitted a faint metallic resonance when tapped. It seemed almost magnetic. Grant ordered samples to be taken for analysis, but when her assistant tried to chip a fragment, the metal tool snapped clean in half. News of the discovery leaked quickly. Online forums exploded with speculation. Ancient builders, pre-Columbian civilizations, even extraterrestrial engineers. The Institute refused to comment publicly, citing ongoing research, but whispers began to circulate among academic circles. The structure was older than 12,000 years. That would make it one of the oldest known constructions on the American continent, predating every established civilization by millennia. Still, no one could explain how such precision had been achieved. Under microscopic study, the surface of the stones revealed a level of smoothness consistent with modern machining, yet no residue of metal tools was found. One geologist described it simply. It's as if the rock itself was shaped by heat, not by chisels, but by something far more advanced. When Grant and her team mapped the layout of the ruins, they realized it followed a perfect radial symmetry. Every corridor, every wall, and every angle pointed toward a central point, a yet unexcavated region deep beneath the dunes. Sensors indicated an anomaly there, something dense and metallic, buried more than 30 meters below the surface. As funding requests piled up and curiosity grew, a quiet tension settled over the project. Local authorities restricted airspace over the site, citing environmental protection. The excavation was paused pending governmental review. Yet, before the team was forced to leave, they made one final discovery. Hidden beneath a corner of the chamber was a small stone tablet, half buried and covered in mineral dust. When cleaned, faint carvings appeared, lines and symbols unlike any known language. They resembled constellations, spiraling inward to a single point. On its edge, a pattern repeated again and again, 3 concentric circles, each intersected by a straight line. Dr. Grant stared at it for hours. Later, in her field notes, she wrote, "It's not a language, it's a design. A map, perhaps. Whatever they built here, it wasn't meant for living. It was meant to point towards something." And as the wind howled through the hollow chambers, scattering grains of sand across the silent ruins, the desert seemed to whisper back, as if something buried deep beneath it was still waiting to be found. The excavation team left the desert reluctantly, forced to halt their research by government order. Yet the few artifacts they managed to bring back, fragments of carved stone, grains of metallic dust, and the mysterious tablet, were enough to ignite a storm within the scientific community. Laboratories across the country began testing the samples, hoping to uncover even the smallest clue about who had built the ruins and how long ago. What they found only deepened the mystery. The basalt blocks from the site showed microscopic traces of fusion, as though the rock had been exposed to extreme heat, temperatures exceeding anything possible through primitive means. The stone surface contained tiny glassy veins formed from partially melted silica, suggesting that whoever built these structures had mastered some form of energy-based tool. "This isn't the work of simple artisans," said materials scientist Dr. Raul Mendez. "It's engineering, precision, the kind we only achieved in the last few centuries, and somehow it's here, embedded in stones 12,000 years old." Meanwhile, linguists tried to decipher the markings on the tablet. At first glance, the symbols seemed random, lines, spirals, and dots carved with exact repetition. But when Dr. Grant compared the layout with ancient star charts, she noticed a striking resemblance. The central spiral mirrored the alignment of several constellations visible only from the southern hemisphere, impossible to observe from the American desert. "Either they traveled," she said, "or they remembered the sky from another place." Further analysis revealed that the concentric circle symbol repeated not only on the tablet, but subtly across the stones recovered from the site, etched faintly into the corners as if part of a greater design. Grant began to suspect that the architecture itself might represent something astronomical, perhaps a scaled map of the heavens. When superimposed over a sky projection, the placement of the outer structures matched the relative positions of major stars within the constellation Orion. The alignment was too precise to be coincidence. But the question remained, who were they? There was no pottery, no bones, no organic remains of any kind. Carbon dating on nearby sand layers gave inconsistent results. Some samples measured only a few centuries old, others older than recorded history. The site seemed to defy time itself, as though it had been built and rebuilt across different eras, or perhaps as if it existed outside of time altogether. In the months that followed, strange events began to shadow the research. Several members of the original expedition reported vivid dreams, visions of massive stone corridors, glowing symbols, and a deep humming sound beneath the ground. One engineer described hearing what he called resonance, a low vibration that seemed to pulse through the sand whenever the wind reached a certain speed. "It's like the place is alive," he told Grant during a recorded interview. "Like it's remembering us." Grant herself returned to the desert without authorization, driven by an obsession to uncover what lay beneath the central hub, the anomaly that sensors had detected 30 meters below the surface. With only 2 assistants, she began a small, quiet excavation at night, away from official oversight. The deeper they dug, the stronger the magnetic readings became. Their compasses spun uncontrollably, electronic devices failed, and the air grew unnaturally dry, as though the moisture was being drawn away. Then, at a depth of nearly 25 meters, the team uncovered a section of smooth black stone, unlike any they had seen before. It reflected light without distortion, almost like liquid frozen in time. When they touched it, a faint vibration rippled through the sand around them. Not sound, but a sensation deep in the bones. One assistant, frightened, refused to continue and left the site. The others stayed. Grant documented everything in her field journal. Her last entry, dated May 25th, read, "This material is not basalt. It's something else, denser, heavier, almost magnetic. I believe it forms the roof of a chamber. The pattern on the tablet was a clue. We are standing above what they wanted us to find. The next morning, the camp was found abandoned. Tools were left scattered, lights still burning. No footprints led away from the excavation, only the shallow depression in the sand where the dig had been. The black surface they had uncovered was now completely covered again, as if the desert itself had swallowed it overnight. When authorities returned weeks later to investigate, they found no trace of the hidden chamber. Satellite scans of the area revealed nothing but blank terrain, as though the structure had shifted or vanished entirely. Only Dr. Grant's notebook, recovered from her tent, remained. The pages stopped mid-sentence, the ink smeared as if written in haste. In the months that followed, new teams attempted to locate the site again using the original coordinates. Yet every expedition reported the same thing: endless dunes, no ruins, no stone, no trace of human activity. The satellite images that had first exposed the anomaly were quietly removed from public databases, replaced by blank sand textures. Still, whispers persisted. A few field workers spoke of nights when the desert seemed to glow faintly from beneath, of strange geometric shadows visible only under moonlight. Locals began calling it the Silent Zone, a place where compasses fail and where sound itself seems to vanish. Officially, the ruins never existed. The Institute disavowed the entire project, but those who had seen the data knew better. Somewhere beneath the shifting sands lay evidence of a civilization that should not exist, a people who left behind no graves, no names, only geometry, and a silence that feels alive. Dr. Grant's final words, scribbled in the margins of her notebook, captured the heart of the mystery. We thought we were studying the past, but maybe what we found is still waiting for us. When Dr. Eleanor Grant descended into the second chamber, the air was thick and strangely cool. Her flashlight beam swept across the stone walls, revealing carvings that no one in the team could immediately identify. They were not Native American, not Mesoamerican, and not any known symbol system cataloged in anthropology. The lines were sharp, intersecting in angular patterns that looked more like circuit diagrams than sacred art. At the center of the chamber lay a circular platform. Around it, 7 pillars of dark stone stood like sentinels. Each pillar bore an engraving of a figure, tall, cloaked, and faceless. The details were immaculate, carved by hands that understood geometry as well as artistry. These people were engineers, whispered Dr. Grant. Not just builders, engineers. The discovery sent shockwaves through the academic world. Initial radiocarbon dating of organic fragments found inside suggested an age of at least 10,000 years, long before any known civilization in North America. That meant the people who built this had existed during the Ice Age. Impossible, according to mainstream history. But the deeper the team went, the stranger things became. Beneath the circular platform, a shaft descended another 20 meters into darkness. The walls of this shaft were lined with black stone that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. When Dr. Grant touched it, she described it as warm, almost pulsing. At the bottom of the shaft lay an object, metallic, smooth, and embedded within the rock. It resembled a disc, about 2 meters wide, covered in the same geometric symbols seen above. It emitted a faint hum just at the edge of human hearing. The instruments used to scan it malfunctioned. Compasses spun wildly, and cameras refused to focus. One researcher fainted when he tried to approach closer than a few feet. Outside, the excavation site began to draw attention. Drones hovered overhead. Black SUVs appeared on the horizon. Satellite signals in the area were suddenly scrambled. Someone, or something, didn't want this discovery to be public. Then came the night of the storm. Without warning, the desert sky erupted in lightning. Winds tore through the tents. The team retreated into the central chamber for shelter, but when the lightning struck the sand above, the metallic disc began to glow. A low vibration filled the air, building in intensity until it became unbearable. The stone pillars lit up one by one, glowing with the same eerie symbols now pulsing in perfect rhythm. "Record everything," shouted Grant over the noise. But the cameras flickered and died. For nearly 3 minutes, the entire underground complex hummed as if alive. Then, silence. When morning came, the storm was gone, and so was the disc. The shaft where it had been was empty, sealed with melted rock as if it had never been opened. The team stood speechless. No debris, no radiation traces, no signs of removal, just silence and dust. Later that day, Dr. Grant received a call from her institute. The project was being terminated, all findings classified, equipment confiscated, the official explanation, unsubstantiated geological anomaly. But the look in her eyes said otherwise. "We touched something ancient," she told her assistant quietly, "and it wasn't meant to be found." Weeks later, the excavation site in the desert was gone, bulldozed flat, covered with sand, and fenced off by men who refused to identify themselves. To the public, there was no record of any dig, no coordinates, no mention in scientific journals. The desert was empty again. But for those who had been there, Dr. Grant's surviving team, the memory was impossible to erase. Most refused to speak publicly, citing non-disclosure agreements and veiled threats. Yet small pieces of information began to surface. Encrypted emails, corrupted drone footage, fragments of audio that hinted at something far greater than anyone had imagined. In one recovered file, Grant's voice trembled as she described the final readings before the blackout. The energy signature wasn't from any known element. It was patterned, intentional, like a message encoded in vibration. Then the recording ended. 2 months later, Dr. Grant disappeared. Her apartment in Santa Fe was found abandoned, personal items still in place, computer wiped clean. Her colleagues assumed she'd gone underground. Others whispered that she had been taken. But then something even stranger happened. Amateur satellite watchers noticed that the area of the desert where the discovery had taken place was no longer the same. The topography had changed, subtly but undeniably. The dunes shifted in impossible ways, creating faint concentric rings visible only from high orbit. It was as if the structure below had reawakened. Geologists tried to explain it as a mirage, a heat distortion caused by atmospheric refraction. But in the following months, sensors in nearby military facilities began detecting low-frequency vibrations at regular intervals, pulses that matched the harmonic pattern recorded by Grant's team before the storm. One by one, the researchers who had worked on the project began reporting vivid dreams, cities of glass beneath the desert, voices calling through sand, a sense of being watched from below. Then, 6 months after the disappearance, a new satellite image surfaced anonymously online. It showed something extraordinary. In the middle of the desert, faint but unmistakable, glowed the same circular formation that had once been buried deep underground, now exposed, like an eye-opening. Government agencies denied the image's authenticity. But those who had seen the ruins knew the truth. The site wasn't destroyed, it had moved. Some believed the structure was never built by humans at all, that it was ancient before humanity even began, a machine buried to sleep until the right moment. Others claim it was a refuge, a remnant of a forgotten civilization wiped from history. No one can say for certain. The area is now restricted, guarded 24 hours a day, its coordinates erased from public maps. And yet, at night, from miles away, locals report seeing faint lights flicker beneath the sand, rhythmic, almost alive. The desert remains silent, but somewhere beneath its shifting dunes, something waits, watching, remembering. And as Dr. Grant once wrote in her final note, recovered months later from an untraceable source, "The Earth keeps its oldest memories buried deep, not to hide them, but to protect us from remembering." Close quote.